Hey guys, welcome back. So today's video is going to be a good old-fashioned repot and chat, although I'm going to be splitting this into kind of two parts. Typically my dedicated repot videos are split into two parts anyways, because I show you the plants at the beginning and then we go get into repotting and maybe not talking about plants. Although the showing of the plants might be a little bit longer because I do plan on changing up the substrate slightly, not drastically, but a little bit for the plants in question today, based on some things I've been kind of not experimenting with, based on some recent repots where the plants did respond pretty well. Plants that were kind of dormant or kind of stuck at a certain size were starting to gear up again, and I want to give you a bit of an update on my experimentation with tree fern soil components. It'll all make a little bit more sense as I talk through the plants. And then the second part of the video, obviously repot and chat, I opened up my Instagram to questions and topics. I was kind of gathering questions and topics for multiple future videos, so some of these were like maybe possibly for both me and Charmaine, and I'm going to be answering, just picking some I feel like are just more meant for me, planty and personal questions all mixed in together. They're in no particular order. So for those of you who are just here to look at plants and talk about plants, this first part is for you. But actually, let's rewind a little bit on the tree fern soil versus tree fern thing. So the component of my tree fern soil that has been changing is like the soil element of it. So when I first started using tree fern soil, I was using tree fern and like the added amendments like perlite, bark, and all that stuff with the Pro Mix, Myco Mix, which is like a peat base with a ton of like fine perlite in it. And then that worked really well. So then I was like starting to mix more. And then I tried another component, which is, I just showed it recently in my last week's video, the planty vlog. It's this soil right here. I bought it from the outdoor section of the garden center. It's a lot of stuff. There's peat, there's coco coir in it, there's compost, and there's a lot of amendments in it as well. So that also worked really well. And then after I was done that bag, I didn't feel like going there again, buying a humongous bag. So I went back to the Pro Mix, Myco Mix, which also worked quite well because I'd used it before. And then I decided I was going to try sea soil, which is like a kind of composted wood like byproduct mix, and there's like fish stuff mixed into it. I wanted to try that mix because I was wanting an alternative to peat because I was trying to limit how much peat I was using. And now it's been a few months and I can kind of say that I've noticed my plants growth rate is not quite as good as before. I haven't documented this super heavily, so I'm not going to give you like hard facts. It's just what I've been observing, and also it's been winter, so you know, take this with a grain of salt, but I've been noticing not necessarily root growth, but foliage growth rate not quite the same as when I was using the other soil components in my tree fern soil. So I wanted to switch it up, but also last month I repotted a bunch of plants that were kind of struggling and kind of stalling out into tree fern, just mixed with a lot of perlite. It wasn't necessarily 50-50, but maybe like 40% perlite to 60% tree fern fiber. It's something like that. I don't really measure it very precisely, but it's more perlite than I normally put into my tree fern, and the plants are doing really well. So I want to put some of these struggle plants in it because I want to focus on root growth and just kind of start them back up again, because I'm noticing that they're not sizing up as well as I'm used to. I don't suspect that they're necessarily runts, so I think they have better potential. But I'm thinking that the composted soil that I was using in my tree fern soil mix might have been a little bit on the dense side. Don't get me wrong, a lot of the plants didn't respond negatively to it, and I don't even necessarily think that these responded particularly negatively to it, but I just think they can do better. So some of the plants we're repotting today are going to go into the tree fern soil mix with the composty soil, and then some of them are going to go into tree fern and perlite. So the first plant that I really want to get potted up into the tree fern mix is this that I got from IAS last year. This is a plant from Paul. So this one is a Carla Yard crossed with Stripey Mag. This leaf is the reason why I want to get it going, because I'm like, okay, so you're really cute. The first leaves on the plant were so squiggly and wavy, and that's kind of what caught my eye. Actually, my friend Kayla pointed it out to me, and I was like, well, that's interesting. And then this leaf grew in my care, which has kind of like little fungal looking dots on it. I'm not really sure. It doesn't look like pest dots. It doesn't look like mite dots. I don't know. But you can kind of see that it's a little bit speckly, but not mite speckly. But anyway, this leaf, I'm like, I need to get serious with you. It also has a lot of cobwebs in it. Is there a spider in here? Reveal yourself. So I can't even say for sure which tree fern soil this is potted in. I want to say it's the compost one, but I can't tell you for certain. But I don't see a ton of roots on it, but it is growing, just not sizing up. Now we're closing in on March, so we're way past the point of thinking that IS was like a recent thing. This was in September that I got this. So this plant should be much, much bigger than it actually is. So we just need to get serious. The next plant I want to do was not from IS. This was from Buzz Plants that I got like almost a year ago, and look how tiny it is. Granted, it was a 2-leaf sprout when I got it, so it's not like it didn't size up, but it should be a lot bigger than this. So this one is a Carla RA8 Self, and I don't know that this will necessarily be like the strongest, most robust Carla, because when it was given to me, it was like so small that it was probably too early to tell whether it was like a strong plant or not a strong plant. But as a reference, around the same time, I got this Carla RA1 by RA16. And this one we did recently repot, so we're not repotting it today. We got it out of tree fern soil into tree fern with perlite, and the roots have been growing really well. And then it popped out this leaf, and this one has been so slow for me, but this leaf is not even hardened off, and the petiole is bulging. I don't know if it's gonna be easy to tell, but it's going to be popping out a leaf fairly soon, which is so much faster than it's been growing historically. So I'm hoping that this one will have the same reaction and just kind of get going, because these two, if they were growing at the same rate that my Woo One Self was growing, it would be like flowering size by now. So they're very, very behind. While we're talking about updates from that repot where I moved stuff out of tree fern soil into tree fern perlite, this is my Carla Black Widow Michelle, and it popped out this leaf. It's still not fully expanded, obviously. You can see that it's still glossy, so it's not even expanded to the point of being velvet yet. And the veins are looking delicious. I'm finally seeing roots on the side of the pot here. Oh wait, but going back to this Carla, the one that we're not repotting, the RA1 by 16, this leaf hit the side of the pot and got damage on the leaf tip. That's why it's curled in. But this venation has me so excited and so intrigued because of like how much bleeding there is right at the sinus. And just the venation is so spidery and kind of like wrong looking. So I really want this one to size up. I'm going to upsize this as soon as it fills out the pot, but I'm going to keep it in tree fern perlite and just see, because it seems happy enough that like the growth rate has increased. Although in saying that, that plant was the last one of that batch that he had sold. Basically, it was like maybe down to 2, and one was like kind of dying, and then there was this one that wasn't dying, so he sent that one. So it was like the straggler of the stragglers. So I don't expect it to be some sort of beast Carla or anything. It's encouraging to see that it's growing again. Another simple repot I want to do is this one. This one is Carla Lux. I got this plant from my friend Amanda, but this one was bred by Paul, and it just needs an upsize. Like the roots are really, really full in here. This one's in tree fern soil. It'll stay in tree fern soil. I'm just going to upsize the pot. I really want to cross this one back to Carla. I think it would be so fun, because this one is like just so, like for a Lux hybrid, it's so flat. Like it's not as bumpy as other Lux hybrids, and it's really dark but super blue toned. But first we need to get it to flower. So it's already in caterpillar. We just want to get it going. So I won't be cutting it anytime soon. Oh, but this one is the second newest leaf, and it's like slightly bigger, same-ish size as this one. This is the newest leaf. I suspect this one got a little bit asymmetrical and wonky because it got a little bit dry while it was forming, but the fact that it's not sizing up anymore probably tells me it needs bigger pots. A couple of other plants I got from Amanda. So this one is, well, it's not her hybrid, but I did get it from her. This one is Ace of Perps crossed with Pap, and this one's done by Tyler Russo Plants. Look at that new leaf. It's so cute. So Ace of Perps is, I think, a selfling of Ace of Purple. It's Tyler's specimen, but it looks a lot like Ace of Purple, and it's so purple and it's so pretty, and it's really round, and it's crossed with a Papillanum. But you can see it is getting very bleached as at the very, very top of my tent. So there's like a grid on the wall, right? And then there's baskets, and this one's like almost touching the grow light. So we need to get into a bigger pot, and I'll move it somewhere else, and something else will take its place up there, something much smaller. But I want to prevent this new leaf from getting overly bleached like this one. The roots have pretty much filled out this pot. I want to get into a bigger pot. Same thing with this one. This one's also around the same time. Look at the roots on this one. So this one is Gerald Bess crossed with Woohoo's First Night. So Gerald is Amanda's kind of no ID pap hybrid, which she crossed with Bessie AF, and then one of the offspring she then crossed with Woohoo's First Night. And this leaf is so cute. It's slightly lighter than it should be. The thing about this hybrid, when she was showing me all her little offspring, is that they have such hot pink sinuses. I think you're gonna be able to see it. It's so pink. And the veins are pretty vibrant. Look how bleached this one got too. You can really see the bleachiness here and also here. This is a fairly new leaf that just hardened off, so it's not quite bleached yet. I will say I don't really see a ton of best in here. Like, it's kind of like a hint of best, but it didn't really show through that much. Look at the back of the leaves. So pink. And it's flowering like crazy. It's poking out another inflow. So 1, 2, and 3 at the same time. So this one also needs to get into a bigger pot, and I'm gonna move it out of that same top shelf area of my tent. And 2 more little guys. So this one is my hybrid I did with Charmaine. So this one is Brielle Crystal Black, and this one was one of my holdbacks because I thought the veins were quite interesting. It's so like chalky and like messy, brush strokey. It's not as clean as like, say, this one. This one is a sibling, and the veins on this one are so much messier than this one. Super, super clean. So this one I suspect just has some dead roots I should probably clean up. Maybe I'll get it into the tree fern mix, like not the tree fern soil. It definitely doesn't hate tree fern soil, but I think it needs to be rerooted because it lives inside of a bin, and oftentimes I will neglect the bins because it's closed. So I'm like, it doesn't need to be watered maybe once a month, but then oftentimes I'll get in there and I'll see that a lot of the plants in there are completely dried out. So it doesn't look terrible, but I want to get into a bigger pot and just kind of get jump started a little bit because I want to see what this one looks like. And then this one is, I'm not proud of this one, but this is FTG Crystal. It looks so bad. This one I got from IAS. This one's a Fairchild Crystallinum Self, and it lost all of its leaves because it got completely dried out. It lives inside of a dome, and I've been really bad at getting in there and watering my dome plants because I just assume that they're fine because it's all enclosed. But this one got really dry. All the leaves crisped off. There are definitely healthy roots in there. And here, I'm thinking of getting this into a bigger pot and just popping it into the tent where I can keep a closer eye on it. I've been seeing other people's that they got at the same time at IAS, and they're way bigger. And I just know that this one's not happy inside of that dome. It's probably too bright of a light. It's like right over top of it. So I'm thinking in that top part of the tent will be lower light than right under the light in the dome. So I think for my tree fern soil going forward, I still have a pretty full bin of the soil mixed up. I don't have any more of like the bag of the sea soil, but I think what I'm gonna do going forward for my tree fern soil mix is I still want to limit how much peat I use. I wish we can get Fox Farm easily here, but it's not that easy. But I wanted to get Fox Farm Happy Frog. For those of you who have used it in tree fern soil, let me know what you think of that mix. Also, I was thinking of Ocean Forest, which does have peat in it, but it's not the only component. Or possibly I'll go back to that outdoor veggie soil that worked so well for me last year. But I don't think I'll be getting sea soil again for my anthurium. I'll definitely use it for my outdoor plants, like my veggie garden. So that is the repot list for today. I'm gonna get set up now for repotting and answer the questions. The questions I got on Instagram, I feel like are like pretty split down the middle for planty and personal. So I'm just gonna kind of randomly go for what sounds interesting in the moment. Although in reading the questions, there's one that I probably should just show you now. The question is, what happened to yours or your bestie's Ralph Linum Fort Sherman or a Fort Sherman Ralph Linum? It's a Fort Sherman Ralph Linum. I haven't shown it in a while, but it just put out a new leaf. So I'm gonna show this to you before I start repotting. So this plant is tucked into the back of my tent, so it's kind of a pain to, oh my gosh, this leaf is so funny looking. It's so cool. Look how fat the bottom of the leaf plate is. This one hasn't been like the easiest, like fastest growing pap for me, but it seemed to be doing fine. The roots look good. It doesn't drink very quickly. I don't have to water it very often. I would say like every 3 weeks I have to water this thing, and it hasn't flowered for me since I got it. Like it flowered for me that one time. So this one is the pollen parent to this hybrid we did. This one is my pap RA5 crossed with this Fort Sherman Ralph Linum. It did take quite a bit after the Fort Sherman Ralph Linum because my RA5 self is very green, very round, very bumpy, but I think this one is a lot more blue toned very similar to Dad. Here is an older leaf. It's like more blue toned. It's not very bumpy at all. It's kind of more like blood vessel-y. Here's another leaf. I feel like that shows really the blue tint. But yeah, it's doing fine. And I didn't even realize how funny this leaf is with the really big chin. I do have a prop of this that will be for sale in the next restock. I was considering putting this in the last restock we did, but I just repotted, so I wasn't sure if it was like a good idea to ship it right away. So it will be on the next restock. It's just the cutting of this that I've been growing for a really long time. It's probably like, the leaf is about this big now. And when you take a plant out and you try to put it back in, and you don't even know how it fit in there in the first place. Oh, I found another plant I wanted to show you. Sorry, we're gonna get repotting soon. But this one is Carla Ace. No, Ace Carla. This one is the only Ace Carla I have left. So this one is Ace of Spades crossed with Carla GPH. And it's a little prop that had been just kind of stalled out, dormant for a long time. And so I moved it out of a little pot. It was this size pot into the 4-inch size. And it was in tree fern soil. And I was like moving the stem. It just felt really wobbly. So I wasn't sure if there was root rot in there. There just wasn't a lot of root coming out of the top part of the stem. So I buried it a bit deeper in tree fern perlite, so not tree fern soil, and it has popped a leaf, which I don't think it had put out a leaf for a good 4 months plus. I only repotted this maybe tops 2 weeks ago, so it hasn't been a ton of time. It's just encouraging to see that it started back up again. So I think I'm gonna start with the little plants that are going into tree fern mix and not tree fern soil, just so we're working with one substrate at a time. So I just mixed up, I just kind of filled up this bin a little bit more with tree fern and perlite. It's hard to get it to mix uniformly, but it's a good amount of perlite. Maybe it's not 40-60, maybe it's more like 35-65, but this should be more than enough for the little plants that we got. And I think I have like exactly the amount of pots that I need. I have some dirty ones I need to clean, but after that, I really need to order more pots. Like, I don't know where they all went. Actually, I do know where they went. I sold the plant that it was in. I think I'm gonna start with this crusty Carla. I mean, it's not crusty. It just needs a bit of a facelift. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna be getting it into the 4-inch size pot. Just based on this big chunky root that's at the top, I feel like maybe it's ready. We shall see. And while we're on the topic of substrates, one of the questions was, what soil mix is your current go-to for anthurium? And since I already talked about it so much, I will say that the tree fern soil video I made, this one right here, I think I did do like a rough ratio, even though I don't necessarily measure when I'm mixing up my substrates. I'm just going by feel. That's generally the recipe that I do. So it's going to be some sort of soil component, tree fern fiber, perlite, fir bark, and worm castings. So there's root rot. Okay, maybe it's not going into a bigger pot. Just shaking off the excess soil. Yeah, you can kind of see the tips of a lot of roots here are rotten. And there's like the remnants of already rotted off roots, like the little stringy bit inside. So I'll save what I can from here. So I'll definitely save the leca that I'll rinse off and reuse in the future. And by the way, I always save the soil I plan on sterilizing in the oven in a separate bowl. And when I have enough, then I'll do a round of baking. I'm actually surprised it was able to put out that cute leaf with all of this rot. It's not gonna lose its entire root system, but I did cut off a lot of it. I used to do that whole thing where you like soak it in hydrogen peroxide and stuff whenever I have root rot, but I just feel like for anthurium, I haven't found it to be super necessary. Like, they will rehab and regrow from those broken cut off roots. So this is what I'm left with. Not the worst root system for this size of plant, and we're gonna keep it in the small pot. Someone asked, which anthurium mama set seed the quickest versus the longest in your collection? So the quickest, and like, I don't even know if people know of I haven't heard personally of a quicker one than Carla. Carla is so fast. My seeds came off of it in like maybe just over 2 months, but it's usually like 2.5 months on average. The longest for me, I don't think I haven't bred enough, and definitely not with ones that have notoriously long gestation periods, to give you like an impressive answer. One of the longest ones are known to be luxurians, which is around a year, possibly more. Clarinervium is really long. I think I've heard up to like a year and a half, but definitely you're looking at about a year. Bessier Af, I think, is around 9 months. I've never crossed a Bess. And a lot of Mexican species are quite long. I've also heard Diabloense is really, really long. But again, that's not from my experience. I just like, that's what I know of these plants. The ones I've bred haven't been like vastly different. It's been maybe like 4 months on average. And then Carla was exceptionally fast. But I think a question that I see asked, not to me, but just in general about gestation periods is, like when you have a hybrid of two plants, so one being a really slow plant and one being like a normal-ish or faster plant, what do you expect the gestation period to be then? So like, for example, the Carla Lux that I wanted to breed. So Lux being around a year and then Carla being around 2 months, you would expect the gestation period, if you were to pollinate that plant, to be kind of somewhere in the middle. So maybe it wouldn't be a year, but maybe closer to like 6 to 8 months would be my guess. Someone asked what your favorite shows, movies, and books are. Okay, I'm going to out myself and say I don't read very much. It's not something I'm proud of. I like, nobody should be proud of that. But I do have favorite movies and shows. I really like Schitt's Creek. Like, I always go back to it. It's so comforting, and I think it's just like such a cleverly made show. And probably Moira Rose, Catherine O'Hara's character, is one of my favorite characters, like comedy characters of all time. She's brilliant in that show. Currently I'm watching, so we had canceled Crave and I just signed back up to it like a few days ago. My boyfriend had subscribed to Crave and then we were watching, I forget what we signed up to watch, but when we had Crave, I was watching a lot of Game of Thrones, and he does not like Game of Thrones. He doesn't really like fantasy and dragons and stuff. So I think he got really sick of it and he was like, well, I'm just gonna cancel it. If you ever want to sign up for it again, you can do it yourself. So I lived without it for a while, but then the newest season of White Lotus is out now. Like, we're at this point 2 episodes in and they're still releasing them weekly. So I was like, well, let's just like get Crave again. We can watch White Lotus. And then while we're at it, I realized there was a whole season of House of the Dragon that I hadn't watched because Crave was canceled. So I'm watching House of the Dragon right now, and we're working through White Lotus as the episodes come out. So I liked Game of Thrones, and like most people, I found the last season, and certainly the last half of the last season, like pretty awful. And so I finished Game of Thrones, went straight into House of the Dragon, and I didn't really like the first season. I found the pacing kind of weird. Like, it was like moving so slow for a while and then it just like jumped, and I couldn't really get into the characters very much. I can't really put my finger on why I didn't really love the first season, but I am liking the second season a lot more. And maybe it's because I'm simple and I just want more dragons, and there's more dragons in the second season. I don't think I'm spoiling anything because House of Dragons, well, if you're now finding out that House of Dragons has dragons, then I'm sorry, but it is more interesting to me. I'm more like, oh, what's gonna happen next? I'm more like needing to get on to the next episode, whereas I feel like the first season I was more like, yeah, that was okay. Like, I could easily turn it off halfway through. Okay, anyways, this one's done. I'm just gonna, for time's sake, I'm going to inoculate them all with Great White after, probably off camera, but just know that they're all gonna get a nice Great White watering after the fact. I probably should be sprinkling Great White dry onto the roots, but you know, I never do. Even if it's here, I'm always gonna forget. You know, it's fine, it's fine. Another thing we watch a lot in this household is British quiz shows. British people love a good quiz show, and I love a good quiz show. So there's like a lot of quiz shows we watch. We watch through so many. 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown. We also really like Would I Lie to You? Super funny. This is like such a, I feel like kind of a boring show, but we kind of like it. Is Richard Osman's House of Games, which I feel like is a show where it's like not comedy per se, but there's some comedic moments, but it's more like a quiz show that makes you work your brain a little bit, but it's not so difficult. Like it's not like only connect, which is really difficult, but it's like easy enough that I can get answers right quicker than the contestants, and it makes me feel good about my brain power. Okay, a plant question. There were a few questions about rehabbing like an anthurium that lost all of its roots, or like also there's one about seedling that has no roots, which is like pretty dicey. Let's do the next crustiest plant next, the FTG crystal. So I just did a root rot video not too long ago where I was like planting the plants into this mix. And of those plants, there was at least one plant, I'm thinking of the King of Spades, that had 0 roots, like it all rotted off and it was only a stem with leaves. So what I did was I put it into this mix and I just chucked it into an enclosed bin, and it's in 100% humidity. It's growing roots, it popped a leaf, it's looking like it's gonna be rehabbed in no time. Although King of Spades is one of the easier anthuriums, so I wasn't really expecting it to be much of a, maybe I don't need to totally change the substrate. I might keep some of this. Yeah, I wasn't expecting it to be a long process for King of Spades. It was just that I had so severely dried it out and then rotted all the roots off. But I would probably do that same course of action for almost anything. Like this Carla, it didn't rot all of its roots, so I am going to put it in the substrate but put it in my tent. It's not going to go into a 100% humidity enclosure. For the seedling though, I would do very much the same thing. Some people might recommend straight up perlite, like pure perlite, but I feel like this like tree fern perlite mix should be fine, and put it in 100% humidity because a seedling is so teeny tiny, so delicate, and it has no way of taking in water, so you can't let it transpire too much and like lose too much water. But I would also kind of prepare to lose that seedling. Another thing people will recommend, and I don't have enough experience with, to say that it definitely works, and I have all this like evidence to show you, but stratum, you could do a stratum perlite mix, which I did do. So when I got the Black Widow Michelles, I had ordered 3. One of them completely rotted out and died, and then one of them is the one I just showed you earlier, and then Jing's was the 3rd one, and hers also eventually died. But I did manage to get it to root in stratum perlite, and then I passed it off to her. So that's about the extent of experience I have for rehabbing anthurium in stratum perlite. And they weren't like tiny seedlings. They were probably not far away from this size, so not like a sprouted seed. So I don't see root rot in here. But the root system is slightly bigger than that Carla, so I am going to go ahead and upsize it. But yeah, to go back to the question, whenever an anthurium has 0 roots, I would prefer to get it into 100% humidity. Unless it's like a plant that I know is so tough and roots like no tomorrow, like my Pallidiflorum that currently has no roots because I dropped the whole thing and the top broke off. It's in water right now, and it's I can see roots are starting to form. Next question. Who is struggling with humidity in ambient conditions or even in an exo? I'll say, I've touched on this briefly in Charmaine's video, but I have found that Forgetii for me are just so difficult to fully acclimate to ambient. Like even if they have been living in ambient for years, I find that they're just like, oh, they're just not great ambient growers. They're not the easiest anthurium for me. And kind of to touch on another question, which is like, what is your oldest plant? It's not this one, this Forgetii here, but this is probably the oldest anthurium in my collection that I have left. The oldest plant I have in my collection is a ZZ plant, which you guys don't ever see. It's so old. I bought it when I wasn't even into plants, and it was just for decor. And this Forgetii, it's too big to live in my tent, but will never. Like, historically, I haven't been able to figure out how to grow it nicely in ambient. So that particular dark Forgetii specimen, my other one that's really dark with the silver veins, I find it tears pretty easily. That I think is the one that I find the most struggly in ambient conditions. Although in saying that, I haven't tried to repot this in years, so I probably should do that first before I give you any definitive answers. In terms of my other plants, I wouldn't say any of them are particularly struggling in ambient. They just grow slower, and you'll get the odd tear here and there, or like not the perfectly formed symmetrical leaf, but I would call that necessarily struggling. Oh, but the other plant that it actually is struggling in ambient is my crystal black, which used to grow in my tent. I moved it out because it got way too, like, it's super helicoptery, so like the leaves are like this, and it moved there and it just doesn't want to grow anymore, which is really sad because I love that plant. Anyways, this FTG crystal is also done. So it's like in a mixture of its original soil, which if I recall correctly was a mixture of Enid's soil and my tree fern soil. So it's a mixture of that now mixed in with more tree fern and perlite. The reason why I kept some of that substrate was because I don't think the substrate was the issue, it was my consistency with my watering. Next up is the Carla Stripey Mag, which is almost definitely going to go into a 4-inch pot. I just got so hungry. Okay, a non-planned question. We're planning a trip to Vancouver in March. Places that are a must to see or eat. This is like my favorite topic, the eating part. I am gonna get so hungry answering this question, but it must be done because this is my moment to shine. So me and my boyfriend, you know how like they say millennials can't afford housing or can't afford to buy a house because we're just eating avocado toast all the time? I definitely feel that because we spend so much of our money on food because it just like our life revolves around food. Like our professional lives is kind of, you know, in the periphery of hospitality. Well, it is hospitality and food and beverage, but more focus on beverage, being in the coffee industry. There's not a lot of roots on here, but they're really skinny, really skinny roots. They're not rotted, but really skinny. Wow. I didn't think this was gonna be like a needle root plant. And in looking at the soil, this is definitely the sea soil. So I think I answered my own question. This is not the ProMix peat soil. So should I do it in a bigger pot or not? I think I want to go for the big pot. Vancouver, it's the culinary scene in Vancouver is really fun because there's so much variety. And I love that there's so much good Asian food. Like if you come to Vancouver, you have to eat Asian food. That's the rule. Like outside of Asia, Vancouver is one of the best places to get Asian food, in my opinion. Maybe not all Asian cuisines, but certainly Chinese food, Japanese food. There's probably a good few examples of all different Asian cuisines, but maybe just not as many. There's tons of sushi restaurants here, and the majority of them are Korean owned. So if you want Japanese, traditional Japanese sushi, there definitely are some. So I think a good place to start is go to the Michelin guide for Vancouver and then just see what strikes your fancy. And not all of them are like given a star, but they have that bib gourmand where it's like they give it a good thumbs up, like keep up the good work, but you didn't get a star. So a few years ago, Michelin came into town and it felt like they were giving out stars like candy. Cause some of these restaurants, I'm like, I didn't think that was like Michelin star material, but they got a star. Some of them for sure, like you could tell that was kind of their mission, you know, like you can just tell that they were gunning for a star and they got a star. Other ones I'm like, that's interesting. Maybe there was a quota they had to hit. So like they needed a restaurant with this type of cuisine and not that many applicants for that category. So I have looked through that list a few times and I will see the Japanese restaurants on there are a lot fancier. And I haven't tried them all, but there's one called Octopus Garden, which I think is in Kitsilano. And that one was quite good. It's like very creative, like artfully presented, but traditional sushi. And there's another place I quite liked called, it's not on the list, but it's called Shiro, S-H-I-R-O. I think their description on Google is just like unpretentious, no, is it unpretentious? Something like that, like casual, traditional kind of sushi. If your sushi taste is a little bit more like, I like the sauces, I like more creative style, like maybe not so traditional. I got tree fern in my, you can probably go to any place, I would say, because like the Korean places are a lot saucier and just like more of like the creative rolls that have a lot of elements in it. There's just so many of those, and there's a lot of just like quite solid, you know. But if you want to go traditional, go for one of the Japanese places. There's some that are really expensive. Like we used to live down the street from one called Masayoshi, which we never went to, but it's like it's just curtains. You can't see inside. They only open for a few hours in a day. And then it's like very, like you're probably spending $300 per person. It's like the omakase where the chef will just design a menu for you and they only do a few seatings per day. One place that everyone always makes a point to go is Phnom Penh, which is a Cambodian restaurant. Like Cambodian, Vietnamese, it's very good. Like we've been there so many times, and like the fried chicken is unbelievably good. I don't know what they put in that fried chicken. It's like wings, but the breading around it, there's definitely sugar in there, but it kind of crystallized a little bit. There's like this sugary crunch, but it's not overly sweet. And you dip it in this like kind of acidic sauce. Oh, it's so good, but it's also very popular. So definitely make a reservation before you go or expect to wait for a while. Oh, I forgot to say this one is done. I didn't fill the tree fern too high because that root system was so small, but I could also have the option of topping it up a little bit more when it sinks. So because we work in food and beverage, we do see the value. Like once you know the cost of goods on ingredients, then you can see that fine dining restaurants, their cost of goods are quite high. So they are very, very expensive, but they also like have longer seatings so that for each diner, they get like the full experience. They're not rushing you. They're, you know, really, really taking care of you. So I do see the value in fine dining. We obviously don't do it all that often, but we do like to support nice restaurants that are independent and all that. And you can see that a lot of these restaurants don't have a lot of capital because they end up opening in like where they can afford the rent, because the rent in Vancouver is so expensive that a lot of the best restaurants end up being in neighborhoods that like maybe aren't the nicest neighborhoods. And then on the flip side, there's like the restaurants that they're a part of like a group, like a restaurant group, but they all are branded very, very differently. But those restaurants tend to be in a lot more like prime real estate locations. So the Brielle Crystal Black, while we're on the tree fern mix, you know what, let's just try, because it is kind of a little struggly. Let's just try putting it in tree fern. I don't remember where I was going with that. Oh yeah, so the restaurants on the Michelin list that actually got a star that I've tried, not that the Michelin guide is the be all and end all, there's root rot, dang it. But there are good restaurants on there. Like I would agree with some of these. So on that list, a restaurant that we've been loving for years now, where am I? Okay, so this is garbage. This is keep. Kisa Tanto, which is in Chinatown, is a really, really nice restaurant. We've been there, I think 3 or 4 times, and every time they just don't miss. And our visits have spanned maybe over 5 years. So it's like from the very first time we went, and we went like there again like 6 months ago, and it was just as good as the first time. So they're an Italian restaurant with Japanese fusion, and they're more what I would think of when I think of Michelin star, because like just everything is very, very well thought through. It's not a very big restaurant. Definitely will need to make a reservation for it. By the way, I cut off some rot, but there wasn't actually as much as I thought there was. But anyways, Kisa Tanto, very good. Kissa space Tanto. There's actually one thing I did take away. So they did this like ragu pasta, and we were tasting it and it was like, it tastes like curry, but it tastes like Japanese curry. So that's one thing that I have borrowed the idea for, like when I'm making pasta sauce. Sometimes if you want like a little bit more depth of flavor, a little bit more aroma, you just throw like a little Japanese curry cube in there. I think one, like, you know how it comes in a block? Just like break off 1 cube and throw it in. Maybe 2 if you want a bit more flavor. But it just like adds a little bit extra. It's like a really nice addition. It doesn't taste overwhelmingly of curry. It's just more complexity. Or if you have like a big thing of sauce, you can you know, have it one day and the next day throw the curry cube in just to make it a little bit different than the day before. Another restaurant that got a star is Published on Main, which we've been there twice. With Published, there was some dishes, like I will say, like I like some dishes more than others, whereas with Chisutando, like I can't even choose. I love them all so much. So Published is a lot bigger. And it's like not in Chinatown, it's in like kind of East Van. It's interesting to me because I like observing how they operate. And I understand not everybody will care, but you know, like if you guys watch The Bear, when they're talking about hospitality and like all the thought and effort that needs to go into the experience, but also in a way that the diner would never notice, you've gone to the effort of reading them, or even like in the show they're like researching the guests ahead of time so they know what their preferences are. And the thing about that show is that so much of it is true to how restaurants actually run in real life, and you can actually see that in action in Published. So the Published menu, the space is very beautifully done, but the menu and the way they describe it, there's like a lot of more approachable dishes on there, and like their style of service is also very approachable. It's not stuffy at all, but if you're watching them work, it's very what's the word? It's just very precise and trained. Like when we were eating there, dishes were brought to the table by someone who I think was in training. You can tell they're kind of new because they seem a little bit nervous, and like they bring you the dish, they have to tell you what like all the elements on the plate. And then in the background, there will be someone just around the corner standing there listening to them, which is obviously their trainer, but they're doing it in a way that like it doesn't make the diner feel awkward, like you're part of a training session. And you know how like in fine dining restaurants, like if you get up to go to the washroom, you put your napkin down on the table, someone will come and like fold it up and put it back on the table for you. So they do, like I watched them do it. So I was sitting at a table, my friend was in front of me, he got up to go to the washroom, and there was someone behind him with his back to us. And he was like, I don't know what he was doing. He might have been like folding cutlery or like polishing glasses. And then he immediately turned around and was like doing the napkin, but he wouldn't, maybe he saw him like out of his peripheral, but you have to be like so switched on and alert and just aware of everything going on inside your space, which I feel like is such a huge part of hospitality, is just awareness of your space and reading every single person. So that's the kind of place that Published is. Like you can tell they're really putting the effort in, and it actually is really nice to see a restaurant where everybody like chooses to be there. Like it's not just a job to them, like, you know what I mean? Another place I actually felt like that was St. Lawrence. I just realized we're done with the tree fern plants, so I'm gonna put this away. Moving on to tree fern soil plants. Let's do the Carla Lux. It's gonna go into a 5-inch pot. I don't know exactly where I left off, but St. Lawrence, it's a French restaurant technically, but I think it's like also kind of like French Canadian. So I've only dined there once, but I've physically been there multiple times because I used to be like a wholesale account manager for coffee. So with the wholesale accounts, I would have to go in there and do brew checks, which is like where if they use our coffee, I go in there maybe like once a month and just like taste the coffee, take some readings, and maybe calibrate a little bit for them, and maybe work on like sometimes I'll clean their equipment for them because the restaurant's notoriously bad at keeping their coffee equipment clean. And side note, just if you're in a restaurant, unless you have to have coffee, I would really recommend you not have coffee, because like the state on some of their machines, disgusting, like absolutely disgusting, because coffee to restaurants is like a necessary evil. Like I've heard people talk about this before where they're like, we have to have it because something broke. They have to have it because diners expect it, but it also makes them turn the table over later, because like they could be done their desserts and then they order an espresso and they're there for like another 30 minutes to an hour. So they don't like having it, but they have to have it. And also half the time it's there to caffeinate the staff. So they really don't like to put too much effort on keeping the equipment clean and like making the coffee taste that good, because they're like, we don't even really like having coffee here because like we can't turn tables over. So you're much better off just getting a coffee from an actual coffee shop, which actually relies on coffee for their livelihood. Anyways, St. Lawrence, we were like approached by the bar manager, who was like actually a lovely person, just not there anymore. I think he started an HVAC business. If you don't know what to do with your life, but you're like, maybe I'll get into the trades, HVAC and refrigeration is very lucrative because it is like such a critical part of restaurants that like the people will pay so much for HVAC service. And it's like on a schedule, you know, like it's like guaranteed money. You're not just going in like once for a repair, like you should be getting on a preventative schedule for HVAC. Just throwing that out there. Anyways, every time we went in there to do our brew checks, it was like always a very nice environment. Like I've done brew checks in restaurants before where when it's not in service, it is gross in there. Like the lights are on, it's dirty, it smells. They have like fans on to like ventilate the area before service starts. And then once service starts, you would never know because like all the lights turn off. And I'm sure the food is fine, but it's kind of a little grimy. But St. Lawrence is not like that. And like the staff, it's a subtle thing, but the staff like are taking care of the coffee and they actually wanted the coffee to taste nice. Most chefs want coffee to taste like so dark because really dark coffee is just basically bitter, and bitter doesn't necessarily compete with flavors in food. Like with pastries and stuff, if you have a more acidic coffee, which is typically like higher quality coffee is going to have a bit more acidity in it, it will compete with sweet pastries, for example. But I always got the impression that the St. Lawrence people wanted their coffee to taste nice, and it was mainly for their staff, not so much for their guests. And then when we actually went to go dine there, we were kind of like the kitchen is very, very intimate, and it's just kind of open. Like there's no walls, there's no windows separating the dining space and the kitchen. And what I observed of the staff was that like they just really enjoy being there. They're working really well together. They're really switched on. But the food was great. Like if you like French food, it's very rich, very rich. I would recommend St. Lawrence, and they did get a star, which I was very happy for them. In terms of coffee shops, a lot of people really like Nemesis. And there's a few locations, so depending on where you're staying in Vancouver, you probably will be able to get to at least one of them. They do pastries, they have a small food menu, their space is quite nice. I will say their coffee is not like the best, but definitely enjoyable to go to. Our new favorite coffee place is in Chinatown. It's by a girl named Annabelle Choi. So it's called Annabelle's. So Annabelle is like a pastry person, and our circles kind of overlap a little bit because she did like sourdough consulting for different businesses and stuff. So I've always known of her, and she finally started her own cafe, and she has, I think, my favorite Queen Amman in the city. So Queen Amman is like this like laminated French pastry, a lot of butter, there's like caramelized sugar in there, and hers is like a bit more puffed up, looks more like a muffin. So I really like her version, it's really good. She also has a lot of different types of pastries, little cakes. Okay, so I was in the middle of talking about pastries when my camera just decided to turn off because I wasn't charging it. We're charged back up now. I think I'm gonna spend the majority of this video talking about food, which I'm not mad at, but somebody might be mad at it. And I only have 2 months left, so I'm gonna wrap up this food talk the best that I know how. So Annabelle, really good. Pastries, awesome. The coffee they use is accompanied by a girl I used to work with, and their company is called Luna Coffee. Excellent, excellent coffee. I learned so much from her when I worked with her. So that would be like my best recommendation. It's like a little bit out of the way. It's in Chinatown. I don't know where you're staying, but that would be my favorite. Going back to Asian food though, if you're gonna be in Vancouver, you should do dim sum. I know that dim sum's not for everyone. Dim sum is not that accessible unless you speak Chinese. It like obviously you can go in there and eat, but you're not gonna get great service unless you speak Chinese in a lot of places. And even for me, I speak a little bit of Chinese, but like I'm not gonna get the service that like my dad gets, for example. So if I'm gonna recommend you places for dim sum that are probably a little bit more welcoming is there's a place called Neptune Palace, which I've only been to the one in Brentwood, which is in Burnaby, not technically in Vancouver. It's a little bit fancier, but really good. Their barbecue pork bun, one of my favorites. It's got like that crystally crusty sugary topping on it. The other one would be probably Keating, Kirin, and that one, I think there's one. The best one I think is in Richmond. There's a few locations, but I think the best location is in Richmond, which some might argue it's a different city to the city of Vancouver. It's in Greater Vancouver, but it's arguably the real Chinatown because it's a whole city where the vast majority of the population is Asian. That's actually where Jing lives. So there's a lot of Asian food in Richmond that's really, really good. But if you want dim sum, which I feel like you should get dim sum while you're in Vancouver, Keating and Neptune Palace, really approachable, kind of like the nicer places. Side note, have you guys seen that TikTok where that guy was like, his formula for finding the best Chinese food is to look like the magic rating on Google is 3.7 stars, I think, or 3.9 stars, one or the other, because their service is so bad by Western standards that they get that star rating. And that's like a little bit more authentic. People were testing this theory and they were like so they thought of their favorite Chinese restaurants in their city and then they looked up their Google rating. It's always like 3.7, 3.9. I kind of tested it a few times. It's kind of true. And then there's also like a lot of craft breweries, which I can't tell you about because I don't drink beer. So hopefully that's a very long-winded answer. I just gave you a few restaurants that I think are really great, and hopefully you have fun while you're here. Food, I think, is the best reason to be in Vancouver. Okay, let's move on to a different question. I'm gonna like remember stuff later that I didn't mention. I'm gonna be kicking myself. Are you going to IS this year? I really want to go to IS this year. I'll say like my intention is to go to IS this year, but will I be able to go to IS this year? So I mentioned a few videos ago that I am going to Taiwan this year, and I had booked to go to Taiwan in March. I would be leaving like just a few weeks from now. So I was supposed to go with my dad and my sister, or like me and my sister was gonna fly together and meet my dad there. But we've had to not cancel, but put a hold on the ticket for an indefinite period of time. It's because of family health reasons. It's not the three of us. We don't want to all be away in case something happens. I realize I'm being kind of cryptic. I don't mean to be cryptic. I just don't want to, I just want to maintain privacy for certain, family stuff. So unfortunately, we won't be able to go to Taiwan in March. And then we were thinking like we can't, I physically cannot be in Taiwan in the summertime. That's just out of the question. It's way too hot. So we were like, oh, maybe we'll rebook in like late September or October, which is exactly when IS is. By the way, I'm repotting the Gerald Best Woohoo right now, and I'm out of the square big pot. So I'm gonna have to do this one, which is like very clear and very squishy. I think Jing got this from, I want to say Temu. Anyway, my dad was like saying like we should just go without him and like have fun and stuff. But the whole reason we were gonna go is to have some time spent with him. So we're like, we're not gonna go if we're not gonna be there at the same time. And if I were to choose between IS and going to Taiwan with my dad, I choose Taiwan. Yeah, I would love to go to IS if it works out. But also it would be like a lot of traveling at the same time. So as of like, if you asked me last week, I would have said, yes, I'm going to IS. Not for sure, but like I'm going to try to go to IS. At this point, it's all up in the air until I figure out what Taiwan's going to be like. Actually, I probably should loosen these roots slightly so I can sit it a bit lower down. Just because of this stem, I want to be able to bury it to here. I think this should be good. But if you're thinking of going to IS for the first time this year, I will tell you what I would do differently from last year. So last year we went there for like 3 days, something like that, and it was way too short. But I also like it was being paid for by Palm Street. We kind of had to go with like what they were booking, but had I not been going with Palm Street, I would have given it at least 5 days, possibly 6 days, because I was seeing that like people were going to like Silver Chrome, were going to see Paul's nursery, and we didn't have time for any of that. I'm glad that we did get the chance to go see Fairchild, which was really nice. So at least it wasn't just IS that we went to, but if you're gonna go for the first time, budget a couple extra days. Like we didn't even really get to see many restaurants because it was such a time crunch that we didn't want to venture too far away from the hotel and like the convention center. Okay, this one is done. I don't hate this pot. It's pretty cute. I wish it was taller. I wish it was like an inch taller. That would be like an excellent pot. Right now I'm thinking it's like a pretty good pot. It's really light and like really soft. So like it would be no problem getting roots out of here. The drainage holes are quite big. If I can find a link, I'll link it, but otherwise just search for clear pots on Temu or maybe AliExpress. Need some recommendations for dealing with flat mites. They're killing my anthuriums. I was dealing with what I thought was spider mites for probably like 2 years until I realized that maybe it's not all spider mites, but a combination of spider mites and flat mites. And the spider mites possibly were eradicated before the flat mites were, but I thought I still had spider mites because I was still seeing speckles on my anthurium. They do crop up every now and then, but the best thing that worked for me for flat mites in particular, not necessarily spider mites, is this Safer's End All. The active ingredient is pyrethrin, and I keep hearing that it's discontinued, but I literally went to a store on the weekend to get Orchiata and they had it. And there's also like different bottles. So there's this yellow bottle and there's also a white bottle and a green bottle. And from the label, they look exactly the same, but I don't actually know the difference. So if somebody knows, please leave a comment because on the surface, they seem like exactly the same thing, just in a different colored bottle. But I also feel like the yellow and the green and the white have all existed simultaneously, so why would they have different color bottles? But I love the spray on this one. It's a really wide spray, and the texture or consistency of End All, it's not like watery, so it will stick to the leaf. And while I was spraying my plants in ambient that had flat mites the worst down. When the lights go off, so you don't want to do it when the lights are on. You can get away with it sometimes, but emergent leaves will get little speckle burns on it. And I was doing it daily, which may have been overkill. Maybe once every 2 days would be ideal, and do it for many weeks at a time, and then they should be eradicated. Like this is the best my collection has been for years for speckle damage. So this would be my #1 recommendation, and it's like pretty easy to get. At least in Canada, like it's legal to get in Canada. A lot of pesticides aren't available in Canada, and I don't know where you're located. And then I feel like if you're in Europe, where it's like even more regulated for pesticides, like people really swear by alcohol because like mites can't really grow immune to it. It will just dry their bodies out. But it's so hard to not get damage on anthurium from alcohol. Some people will say they'll like spray with alcohol and leave it for like 30 seconds to a minute and then rinse it off. You can maybe also try like a Castile soap diluted in water spray and like kind of suffocate them that way and then wash it off. That would be what I would try maybe. I'm trying to just pick questions that are probably just for me and not for me and Charmaine. And while I look for one, let's do the last plant, which is, did I say that other plant was Gerald Best? Woohoo. I mean, that was the Ace of Purple by Pap. And this one is the Gerald Best. Woohoo. Some of my anthuriums starting to bloom. Why am I not getting pollen from some? So if they're starting to bloom, meaning like it's their first flower. I was going to use this as an example, but there's pollen on it. I will very often have the first flower not produce anything. I just kind of like see it as practice round. My Fortune Ralphinum Carla dress just put out its first flower. I was waiting for it to produce pollen, so I was like thinking of maybe putting it on my Carla, but it didn't do anything. It was just like, it didn't go receptive. It didn't No, did it go receptive? No, I don't even think it went receptive, and it didn't even really produce pollen, and then it just died. No, wait, it did go receptive. Sorry, it went receptive, no pollen, died. And now it's putting out its second inflow. I will say that's pretty normal. But of course, there are like some plants that I have that just won't produce pollen ever. And one of those is the Anthurium Queen of Hearts. I really want to do a Queen of Hearts hybrid. And it would be nice to be able to put Queen of Hearts pollen on something else. I did pollinate it the last inflow put out, and it did take because there was like little green bumps forming, and then it aborted because they're really, really hard to hybridize. But every time it produces an inflow, it's receptive forever, and it's like so receptive, like it's literally dripping off stigmatic fluid. But I will say if it's like something that you expect that would have pollen and it doesn't, it's probably because it's the first flower. Oftentimes I'll have Anthurium put out their first inflow and it never even fully emerges. It just like starts to emerge and then it just stops, and it will kind of rot inside of the petiolar sheath. But everything about the plant seems totally fine. The leaves look totally normal. I can't remember if it was my Papare 5 or my Dark Phoenix that did that, where like the first inflow started to emerge from the petiole and then it just stopped. My NSC Red Crystal did that. Yeah, it happens quite often where the first inflow doesn't even come out right all the way, or it comes out and it doesn't go through both male and female phases. But if you're like thinking maybe you're under fertilizing in general, maybe like when it's putting out a flower is when you make sure that it's getting nutrients. And don't ask me about what exactly plants need when they're flowering, because I don't change anything. I just use TPS1 all the time, which a lot of people have reported, and I feel like it's true that it really does make your anthuriums flower more. Okay, another question is, would you guys consider hosting a plant meetup in Vancouver this summer? I think this is a question for both me and Charmaine, but I'm going to answer it now because there is actually an event that we're going to be attending, and it's very soon. So I want to tell you guys now because I don't know when we're going to film together. If you guys have watched like my older videos, you would have probably heard of Vandula Farms, which is a nursery located in Ladner. Yeah, Ladner, which is like in the Vancouver area. So if you're local, there's like a planty event that's coming up in April 26th that they've invited us to, but it's an Ecogenera pop-up. But Daryl, Houseplant Journal, will also be there doing a seminar, and they've asked us to come and they've asked us to let you guys know. So that is definitely it's not in the summer, I guess, but it is a spring meetup of sorts. It's not like for us, it's more for Daryl and Ecogenera, but they did ask us to come, and I'm definitely going to be interested in looking at orchids. And every time I go there, I get one of their frozen pies and bring it back because I am very much looking forward to them being open for the season and getting a peach pie. But in terms of like a meetup of like just us, and I don't think anyone's gonna show up to that, to be honest. Like maybe in the past we've done like local plant purges, and then for pickup we do like a set window and we'll go to a park and just have a little picnic and have all our plants there, and people can come within that window and pick up whenever. I mean, we could do that again, but I think whenever we sell plants, the vast majority of people buying are not from here. So again, like I don't think anyone's gonna come if we have a planting meetup. There's also like another plant pop-up. Yeah, it's a pop-up thing that probably Jing's gonna be a part of, that maybe me and Charmaine will join her and sell some plants with her. If that does end up happening, I'll definitely let you guys know. Okay, I barely got through any questions, but we're done potting up, and it's oh, what time is it? It's 5 o'clock. It's time to start thinking about getting dinner ready. Here's the Gerald Best Woohoo. The Carla Lux is looking fabulous in this pot. I'm so excited for it to get big. These two, by the way, I feel like they just go together. Like where one goes, I just want the other one to go with it. I feel like I don't want to put it in ambient yet, but maybe I'll shuffle things around and put it in here, this EXO here. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I don't know how long I filmed for because I had to pause in the middle because my camera died. But thank you to everyone who submitted a question. And if I think of anything else that like is a must-see for Vancouver, or must eat, not must-see, must eat, because that's the only thing I care about apparently. I will leave it in the description. Any relevant Instagram handles I'll also leave there so you can check them out, because as I'm saying it out loud, you might not know how certain things are spelled. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed a very chilled out repot. I hope you're having a great weekend so far. I love you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Mwah.